Yeah, 6:59. We've got 1 minute, and we'll be ready to go.
All right, because we have to get this going.
It's hot now.
It's hot now. It's registering.
All the studio talk.
Hey, it's hot. We have to get it going. What's going to happen?
You put gas in it or what?
Oh, here it goes. It's starting to, it's sinking. Okay,
We're ready? Okay. The last minute, oh, there we go. It's always the longest minute. I'd like to call this meeting of the Ledyard Town Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Here.
Mrs. Ingalls? Mr. Malone?
Here.
Mr. Marshall? Mrs. McGrattan?
Here.
Mr. Sibilia?
Here.
Mr. Soms?
Here.
This time,
Eight here, 6 here, 2 absent. I was a little delayed.
at this time, we will discuss and vote on appointing a new member to the Ledyard, a new old member to the Ledyard Town Council to fill a vacancy left by Steve Eichelberg, who is off to Guantanamo, correct? Is that correct? Yeah, he's in Texas now.
Protect us.
Yeah, he'll be in Guantanamo. So, would anybody like to make the motion?
I make the motion to appoint Mike Washington to fill the term, the vacancy left by Mr. Eichelberg.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Welcome back.
Yeah.
And thank you, Captain Eichelberg.
That's right. Thanks.
Yeah.
You have to work on your sense of humor just to get up to that level,
I'll work on it.
but you're pretty close, so. Okay, Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Sibilia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Malone?
Yes.
6 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. At this time, Mayor Allen will swear in.
Mr. Washington, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you back. And would you do me this favor and raise your right hand? Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Michael Washington,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly
that I
swear
will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Connecticut,
and the Constitution of the State of Connecticut,
so long as I continue
so long as I continue
a citizen thereof,
a citizen thereof,
and that I will faithfully discharge,
and that I will faithfully discharge,
according to law,
according to law,
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of Town Council
Town Council
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Now, we were, when,
Sign the magic page with the super special pen right here. And you are official.
Thank you, Steve.
when Steve,
Your name's on it.
when Steve called to tell us the news that he was going to be leaving so shortly again, it was a bit of a sad time. And then when you told me that you would be willing, and I didn't expect you to say yes. Actually, I didn't expect your wife to say yes. We were delighted. So thank you for agreeing to serve again.
Pleasure.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Woody, we will open the floor to you for a presentation. Oh, whoa. Is that right? Yes, okay. Yep. No, I was looking to see the
I'm going
timing.
to talk at you for a little while. Open up for questions. So thank you, council members. So for the record, Nate Woody, 770 Long Cove Road, Chair of Ledyard Planning and Zoning Commission. And I'm here to talk to you guys this evening about the Ledyard Plan of Conservation and Development and a comprehensive update that the commission has prepared and forwarded on to you. So just as a reminder for anyone who doesn't know, the POCD is a master planning document which is designed to inventory the state of the town and serve as a guidance document that provides a long-term vision for the town and guide decision-making for growth of development conservation in the town. The Connecticut OPM requires the town to update this at least every 10 years, and it's been 9 years and 10 months since our last update, and quite frankly, it's been longer than that since we've had a comprehensive update of the POCD. Given where the POCD was, we tried to move forward in two ways. And so the first thing that we did is we tried to go through and update as much of the data in there as possible. So in the sort of the current standing POCD, we had census data from 2000, we had survey data from the 1990s, and so we tried to update all of that data as much as possible so that we at least had current demographic and that type of data. The other thing that we did is we went through and we performed an update on the majority of the document, with the most notable exception of setting aside the economic development section. And I'll probably be back to you guys in a couple of years about that section. I think the right way to do that is to do that in partnership with a consultant who can bring in some outside ideas on what the town really ought to be doing in there. And so I felt like that was a good one to kind of leave out for this round of update. So we did not touch that section at all. So we're happy to take any comments that you guys may have on that section. I'm unlikely to start editing it at all if I can avoid it in any way. I think it makes more sense that way. So the way that we move forward is we proceeded with getting volunteers to spearhead the update on each section individually. That person would bring in a draft of that section to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Then as a commission we would go through the draft on what they had, we discuss that, and we'd finalize into a final draft. Once we'd done that for all of the sections, we opened up the completed document to public workshop. And the reason it's a public workshop is because that's an informal way where we can talk with anyone who comes to us. We're not bound by public hearing rules, and we can still make changes sort of on the fly. So we did that through two sessions. We received little input from the general public. I think most people don't understand what the POCD is. It's difficult to engage people. We did get some comments, and so we were appreciative of what we did get. We have our public hearing scheduled for this on February 13th, and so that is the formal public hearing for that. As a part of that process, we obviously forward the POCD to the legislative body, which is you, and we ask for your feedback on that, and we ask for a motion of either approval of the changes or rejection of the proposed changes. Obviously, we would prefer an approval, but I think most importantly is we're looking for feedback. And so I think any feedback that you provide, either in this forum or if you feel like you have comments that you want to make outside of this, please come to our public hearing, and that goes to anyone in the public as well. And written comments are always appreciated too. So if you don't think you can attend the meeting, but you want to write a couple of paragraphs about thoughts that you have on something, get that to us a few days before the public hearing. Gives the commission a chance to read them and understand them, and so that works out really well sort of for us to really process what you're saying. Sometimes it's hard if you show up that night and you tell us something and we're trying to process it and do everything else. So before I go into the document itself, and I'll sort of go through briefly the sections that we updated, I can sort of give a highlight of what we changed. If you guys have questions at any time, interrupt me. If you have things at the end, that's fine too. I want to thank some of the people who put in a lot of work on this. I'm proud to say it was a team effort. So Vin Gadino and the Historic District Commission, we met with them several times. They updated the historic preservation section and gave comments on other sections as well. Ed Lynch, a former P&Z member in the WPCA, as well as Groton Utilities actually, updated the utility section and included all the changes that have been made to our water and sewer systems over the last couple of years. Mike Morelli and the Ledyard Conservation Commission provided us with the draft of the open space and the initial draft of the agricultural section. And all of the Planning and Zoning Commission, everyone took on at least one section in there. And if I can, I'd really like to call out Hillary Evans. She stepped up on two different sections when we had some changes on the commission, and she did a great job of driving things through. And so we appreciated all of that energy. Okay, so I'll go through the sections real briefly, and sort of my goal here was I was going to kind of give one or two bullet points of things that we thought were important from each section, and leave that as a starting point for discussion. If I just get blank stares, then I'll move on to the next section. So the first section of all POCDs is supposed to be the conditions and trends. And conditions and trends this is really where all of the demographic data is. So updating what the population of the town is, what the types of housing that we have in the town is. So how that's changed over time, how we compare to neighboring towns, and all of that. So that was really primarily just a data update of what's going on there. The take-home from that section is the plot that we looked at a little while ago, where we see our population has flatlined for the past 30 or 40 years. And I think that thinking about that as you go forward into other sections is important, because I think when you say stagnant like that, you risk the town not moving forward, and you have to figure out some way to change that. And that brings us to the housing section. And I think there's two take-homes from this. The first is the primary type of residential development we've had in the town for the past 5 years or so has been our cluster subdivisions, right? So they're fairly largest scale cluster subdivisions. How many people know what cluster subdivisions are? That's not bad. So cluster subdivisions are where in a particular residential zone, we allow you to have a smaller lot size than is normally allowed in that district. And the trade-off is that a increased amount of the total parcel is turned over to open space. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to shrink that development. Instead of taking up the entire 100 acres, you're trying to shrink that development down to be on 40 of those acres, which means your infrastructure has to go less far. It means you have less permeable space, and it means that you open up a bunch of open space that can be used by the town. And so we've had a lot of success with those. That's been the primary residential development we've had. The problem with that is, in a lot of ways, that's sprawl development, right? And that works fairly well for large parcels, particularly ones that are in the center of town. It does us absolutely no good in Ledyard Center or in Gales Ferry, right? That's not a tool that we can use there. And so what we need to think about going forward is how do we address the even higher density areas in Ledyard Center and in Gales Ferry Center. And so in the last zoning regulation update, we added the incentive housing zone, which is a mixed-use zone, which allows for fairly high density that we can land in places. Hasn't been used yet. So it's likely that we will get a first test run of that in Ledyard Center. And so we will be starting to see whether or not that's a tool that we can use to try to address those parts of town. But that's an open question. The second big item in housing.
Question. I don't know, on page 13, you talked about accessory dwelling units.
Yep, ADUs.
Okay, I think what maybe you need to do is to put out what areas one can do this in. In other words, if I own a house on such and such a street, I could possibly put in an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah,
You don't mention places where you can do these things.
and we don't, and that's really not the goal of the POCD. And so the POCD's goal is really to point out that ADUs are an important issue. You talk to anyone who's talking about affordable housing, about the second or third thing that they mention is ADUs. And so what we would do going forward is we would say, what regulations do we need to craft to allow accessory dwelling units? Where would we want to allow them? And what standards do we want in place so that we could put them in a neighborhood that wouldn't affect the character of the neighborhood. And so the goal of the POCD is really to point out this is a piece of regulation that should be considered. It's not to spell out the regulation. And so that would be something that we would have to do going forward.
I realize that, but it just seems like if you said, okay, in this area, these would be acceptable. Maybe
Yeah.
they're not written into the regulations now, but at least people who live there could consider doing that. I'm thinking of mother-in-law type apartments, or for young couples,
Yeah.
a three-room apartment.
Yeah.
Zoning issue.
So the zoning issues.
It is, yeah. It would actually be a zoning regulation issue. So currently, right, our zoning regulations allow accessory apartments. So that's attached apartments, which is one type of an ADU.
Attached, I meant, yeah.
It doesn't allow detached. It's something we've talked about, and we don't currently have those regulations. We would have to write those zoning regulations in order to allow that. And so I think one of the goals of the POCD is saying that our commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission, should think about trying to craft those regulations. And I think that's the take home. And I think you're saying that that is something that we should look at, and we should figure out if there's a regulation to be written there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So and so that's nice. It's the next thing I was going to talk about in housing is accessory dwelling units. So if you look at the report that came out of COG just in 2018 in upcoming housing needs, the real take home from that is they expect 50% of all new residential units will need to be rental units. Because that's the people who are moving to the area and looking for places. They are looking for rental units. And accessory dwelling units are a primary source of how do you get a rental property in there. And so I do think that we have to figure out how to support smaller, lowercase a, affordable units and ones that can be rented. And figuring out a way to make accessory dwelling units more accessible is a good one. It's going to be tough, you know. I mean, our neighborhoods were not set up with that in mind, and so it will be tough to thread the needle on where we can do that. But I think it's something that we have to consider, and we may not be able to come up with a regulation that works, but I think the point is that we have to try. Yeah. Any other questions on housing? You can always come back and yell at me on something if you'd like. So the next section is utilities. And so there are essentially really two take-homes here. And the first is the WPCA figuring out how to utilize available capacity, right? So with the update to the wastewater treatment plant, there is available capacity for that. And we need to figure out where we want to use that. And do we want to try to pipe that to Ledyard Center? Is that the place where it needs to go in order to start development there, or where should that spare capacity be used? The other thing that we talk about a lot, comes back in a couple of places, is water source protection. So the water demands in this area are going up. If you've had the pain of looking at the state water plan, you can see that the expectations for the growth of water needs in this area are substantial. WPCA has made great strides with interconnections in order to be able to support some of the small independent systems, and that's been really important, but that doesn't actually change the total amount of accessible water. And so the accessible water comes from Groton Utilities. Much of Groton Utilities' water comes from us. And so, you know, we need to make sure that we figure out how to protect that water going in. Every bit of waste or pollution that you add to that water as it goes into the reservoir has to get filtered out somewhere before we drink it, and that gets expensive really fast. And so a number of the towns in the area have started putting in source water protection plans, which help control what you do when you're in a watershed, what you do and how you do it, most importantly. So making sure that any development that you do doesn't end up degrading the water from there.
Okay, another question.
Sure.
You talked about implementation, and you have connect the Gallup Hill School and the former Ledyard Center School to the Highlands Treatment Plant. Has anybody approached the new owner across the street about possibly wanting to hook up, especially when he builds out his
and
plant?
it's something that's open for discussion. And so, you know, we will have a first initial, the Planning and Zoning Commission will have a first preliminary discussion with that owner tomorrow. So, you know, there are no plans yet. So that is one of the things, and we do actually call that out in the POCD, that is one of the uses of that spare capacity that should be considered.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's a good point. The next section.
So, Nate,
please.
before you move on,
Yeah.
I have Mr. Treaster's comments,
Okay.
and one of
And
them.
so, just to be fair, I got those this morning,
Okay.
so I have briefly looked at them. I'll do my best to answer.
I understand how that
Yeah.
goes. Yeah. So he comments on wired utilities, and it says that in the PLCD, it says that they're placed underground to improve reliability. And he makes the point that should we have a position on wired utilities, saying that they are placed underground in new developments is true, but should we have a stronger statement that they should be placed underground? Must be. And I'm kind of a nudge on overhead utilities. Every time we have a storm, I point out how incompatible trees and wired utilities are. So
Yeah.
my input would be that we'd have a stronger statement in the, if not the PLCD, well, yeah, actually in the PLCD to support zoning and planning regulations.
Yeah, I think it's fair. So in many of, depending on the type of development, so that is another one of the things that we insist on if you want to do a cluster development of some kind, is that all utilities are underground. But we don't do it for all subdivisions. So if someone comes in with a conventional subdivision, we don't currently have the regulation that forces them to do that.
Yeah.
And so that is something that, we certainly could consider moving forward. The interesting things, I mean, I'm of two minds about this, just opinion-wise, just because if you look at the fraction of forward-going utility that we can bury versus the amount of utility that we already have above ground, right?
Yeah. Right.
Even if every new piece of utility we put underground going forward, it's still going to be a tiny fraction of what's out there. And so, I don't know if we'll move that needle. I'm not sure that's a good reason to say that we shouldn't.
Yeah, I don't think we will move the needle, but I still don't think we should make it easier not to avoid problems in the future.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point that, we can look at how we word that and see if there isn't a way to make a stronger emphasis on the importance of that, that is a part of making sure that the utilities are, secure everywhere that they can be.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the next section, this was sort of a new section that we created and we lumped a bunch of things under, which we called the community resources. And so the first was historic preservation. And so
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought that my next comment was going to be under the next section. Sure. Mr. Treaster also mentioned that the data on page 31 at the bottom is from 1998 and 2002.
Yeah, I believe that comment is from the Economic Development and Transportation section. And so I believe that to be true, and we did not update that data. I don't know if we have newer data even available, but we didn't update those sections.
So that's in ECD. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So historic preservation, and so I think that we all agree that this is one of Ledyard's assets, is the number of historic resources that we have, and so we sort of talk generally in here about how we have utilized that, how the Nathan Lester House and the sawmill have been resources and assets for the town, and one of the things that we mention is that we have two nationally registered historic districts in Gales Ferry, but I don't think anybody knows that who isn't already fairly interested in historic districts. And so one of the things that the town should really consider, and probably the Historic District Commission should consider, is figuring out how to try to make more of an asset out of the Gales Ferry historic districts. And there's two of them. They're sizable. I mean, it's 100-something housing units that are included in the two historic districts. They're really significant. The next community resource that we talk about is open space. And so I think one of the real take home from this is, and I think we've done a good job on this in the past couple of years, but we need to make sure we continue it, is emphasizing that the contiguity of open space is what really matters. And so we've had a habit in the past of accepting 3 acres of open space here and 3 acres of open space there, and then 20 years from down the road we try to figure out what land trust we can give that 3 acres to so that we don't have to deal with it anymore. And what really matters is making sure that if we're going to set aside open space, that it's usable open space, it's quality open space, and that it's contiguous to something that actually makes it substantial. The other big thing that came up is working on an inventory of these resources. So one of the questions that came up from a commissioner when we were going through this is, hey, my grandson was here and he wanted to go mountain biking. How do I find out where he can go mountain biking in town? And we all looked at each other and we said, well, I know some places. And so one of the things that, and this comes up in agricultural as well, is, we really need to think about trying to inventory this stuff and making sure that it's accessible. If you look at the Groton Rec website, they've done a really nice job of digitizing all their maps for all of their parks and trail systems and putting them there, so that you can go there, you can see what they're designed to be used for. So this is a hiking trail, this is a mountain biking trail, this is a cross-country skiable trail, so you can find the uses right away, and it's very easy to identify what you can do and what's available. And I know the Conservation Commission is working on that mapping, and so the ask is definitely going to be to make sure that the town council, once those maps are digitized, that they make it onto our web page and make sure that inventory is accessible and we know what's actually there. So open space that nobody uses is
We do have an inventory.
Yeah.
So we do have an inventory of all the town-owned open space.
There is an Excel sheet.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Tell all the residents, call Kevin.
Yeah.
Well, there's an acre and a half on Lynn Drive that's under the jurisdiction of Parks and Rec. And when Don Greasy was here, I asked him, and he said, I have no idea.
So then there is that confusion where the administrative control is, but
he
also to
didn't
your
even
point,
know about this piece of property.
there's also several pieces of property, which is like there's a tenth of an acre over
Yeah.
here and
Yeah.
0.3 acres over there that are not contiguous to anything. We don't know why we got it.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, when you start looking at that list, you know, you see there's the pieces of properties that are theoretically owned by an HOA that was created as part of a subdivision that, has that HOA been a thing for 10 years?
Right.
And so, yeah, I think it's an inventory and it's figuring out what it can be used for. You know, and if you look at the enabling statute for the Conservation Commission, that's one of the things that they can do, right, is, you know, recommend what the best use for that open space is. And I think we need to do a better job of that.
And also, you know, for the most part, most of the open space in town, probably I'd say about 90% of the open space parcels do fall under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Said Don Greasy.
The next thing is we renamed, there has always been a section for Ledyard Center and Gales Ferry. And we were struggling with those a little bit, and so we renamed that into a section that we call the business districts, which we thought was a good name for what we're really talking about here. And so we're really talking about the two commercial centers. And so, you know, Ledyard Center is fairly easy. We kind of know what we want in Ledyard Center, right? We already have a fair amount of commercial available here. We've been pushing higher density residential in the area for quite a while. We know we want a mixed use area there. And so we need to continue doing that. We think that, you know, with the sale of the Ledyard Center School, we're going to make some big steps in that direction. But I think there, we're really talking about maintaining what we've been saying we want to do for the last 10 years, and we're actually going to get some movement in there. For Gales Ferry, you know, we struggle with Gales Ferry, right? Gales Ferry is the busiest road in town, right? Route 12 is the busiest road in town. And so it ought to be the greatest opportunity for commercial use in town. Yet we have lots of vacant commercial space in Gales Ferry that doesn't get filled. And so our suggestion on Gales Ferry is this is really one of the things that EDC, and when we get a consultant in a couple of years to talk about economic development, we need to figure out how to make this an asset. It should be an asset. We have lots of large commercial space. We have the largest parking lot in town. We have, you know, we have bus lines that run up and down through there. Bus access isn't great. I know it's not great, but it's something. And, you know, that should be a resource for the town. And right now it's not, right? It's a partially used shopping center with a parking lot. And so we need to figure out a way to do better. And quite frankly, when we looked at this, we came to the point where we said, Planning and Zoning Commission, we don't know. We don't know what the right thing to do here is. And we need to get someone who understands economic development and how to do that in here. And that's the right thing to do here. And so that's really our recommendation for Gales Ferry. And I say that as a Gales Ferry resident, so.
But to your point, I think we as the town have been struggling with that for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is nothing, to your point, it's nothing new. It's been a difficult, how do we as a town and community deal with that?
Yeah.
And I know we're talking with we've had discussions with some developers, and I know that it used to be a CLMP, they come around to talk about development, and unfortunately one of the we look at Route 12 as, it's one of the busiest thoroughfares getting from Norwich to Groton. Yeah. But from the retailer standpoint and the commercial standpoint, they look at that, if I draw a circle around that location, this side's the river, this side's the reservoir, and then I have this stretch up and down. There's no residential to speak of, no density that would draw the people. Yeah,
I think the mixed use plan that we understand and that we're going to try to deploy in Ledyard Center that's not what Gales Ferry needs. And I think we have been acting on that over the last 10 years. Is they're the same, right? And so whatever we think is going to work in Ledyard Center should work in Gales Ferry. And I think they're different. And I think we need to be
handled differently.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
There are some positives there, though. I mean, there
has
been some business growth. There's a new business coming into the Galesbury Animal Hospital, I understand.
No, there've been some.
There has been growth, and I think the Galesbury Landing, is
Yeah.
one of the bright spots in that area. That's something that worked, and I think, the town stepping in and treating that as an incubator worked. Right, that worked. And so, it was angsty for a lot of people, but it worked, right? So it got businesses there. Some of those businesses migrated across the street, and, Galesbury Landing is full. And so that has been a success. And so, what I take from that is it can be done, right? We can do economic development there. It's definitely possible. And we just have to figure out the right levers to pull.
Ocean State Job Lot is almost full. It doesn't look pretty, but it is full.
It's
and I
close.
think-
There's about,
It's prettier.
yeah, they did a great job cleaning up.
There's still a few
Yeah.
open spots.
There's 3 or 4 open spots that are still empty.
But to your point, we've been handling what we've been able to do here in Legend Center and think that same vision
Yeah.
would work in Gales Ferry. And
Yeah.
obviously has not. There has been some, it has turned around a little bit, but what can we do to help to improve it more, I think is.
Yeah.
And it needs to be not handled the same way as Legend Center.
Yeah, I think that's right, and it isn't to say, it's been a failure, but, you look at the amount of open commercial space there, and there's less than there was 5 years ago, without a doubt. There's still a lot of open commercial space there. You look at the beautiful remodeled buildings just up the hill, right? They did a great job remodeling that. It's got a great parking lot, fairly easy access, and,
And then you get Datacom.
yeah, and exactly. And so there's a number of properties there, and I think, again, talking about, redevelopment of the Cartway property, is another one. If that can get to a point where we can redevelop that, it'd be a great possibility. So, there's things that can be done there.
But that's out of control of the town. If he doesn't want to sell it,
Absolutely.
nobody can develop it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Unless you hit the lottery.
Yeah.
I've seen traveling around New England, I've seen some areas which used to be undeveloped that were prime for the kind of development I think we want. And a good example is University Avenue in Boston. It's really in Dedham, but they build these 3- and 4-story buildings that are apartments right on the road, and there are retail in the first floor.
Yeah.
Yep. And young people move in there, and once you start that just keeps moving out and moving out, and it supports the retail that's already there, makes the retail that's there more valuable. And then you see the malls go upscale. They're not upscale, but they become busier. And they're not even malls, they're like Ocean State Job Lot.
Right.
Yeah.
So those huge parking lots are now getting buildings built in them, rather than go.
Well, and I mean, one of the
Somewhere
things that, most people don't know is that in the Ocean State Job Lot parking lot, there are actually 4 commercial pads,
Yes.
I believe. And so, there's nothing there, and so they look like parking lot right now. But
Oh.
there are undeveloped commercial pads
Oh.
right there as well.
We had
So-
changed the regs to allow, basically to coincide with Dunkin' Donuts is.
Yeah.
To allow for commercial
Yep.
pads to get put in
Yep.
there for
Oh.
other buildings to get further,
Yep.
but
Yep.
to
Yeah.
Dave's point, nothing has come from that. But
Yeah.
that was one of the things we did work with.
But putting it in the PLCD is how you attract.
Right, but that was one of the things that the planning and EDC had put together to work with and work with
Yeah.
Job Lot Plaza to kind of put that together to allow that kind of development to happen. It just,
Great. Didn't have.
no commercial entity has become interested in it yet. But how do we get that kind of interest? It's a different kind of focus that we need to take.
Public sewers would be tremendously valuable.
That
Yeah.
would help.
Yes.
Yep.
So I have one more comment, and then all the others that I have, I'll just share with you.
Sure.
Through the normal process. I have to find where it is. Page 32. Yeah, it is, right. I had this highlighted. Where it talks about the relations with the tribe. There's a statement, this relations between the town and the tribe have been frequently troubled in the past.
Mhm.
I think we could take that out.
Yeah, he said that, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember that.
So I'm just saying,
I
I agree with this comment.
I would just say I wouldn't take it out,
You would not?
because it's still true today.
It is true, but I think we should move forward from it. It is true.
Okay, that's your
but-
opinion.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
opinion is says it should stay in.
So I think that, you know, so
Why-
so we had a discussion about that when we got that at planning and zoning. And so, you know, so I came to the town largely, you know, after the casinos and the reservations were changed. So I was not a part of that process. And so my response was, why is this still in here? You know, and several people on the commission who have been here longer said it should stay in there. And so,
We're still writing a check every 6 months to the attorneys.
yeah, and so, you know, what I can say is, you know, we'll discuss it again at the public hearing. And, you know, if we get other opinions, we'll take those into account. You know, the commission was essentially about as stalemated as the two of you are right now. So I think the default was we cut it in about a third of what it used to be, but left it in, was I think where we ended
It's
up.
not a big one for me.
Yeah.
To the point, I mean, from a
It is
historical,
true.
from
Yeah,
a
it's
historical standpoint, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Has it gotten better? Yes.
Yeah.
Is it,
In the past, you could
you know,
say in the
and
past.
that's what it says, and there had been,
But I thought it was anachronistic, and if we don't all agree, then
Yeah.
I'll withdraw it. So,
I mean,
I'm fine.
all the comments are welcome, right? We'll never accept all the comments, but, you know, the input is good. You know, if we get a lot of input that says we should think about removing it, then, you know, may push it in that direction. So.
okay, one more then. Page 32. There's a picture of 214, it's Fig 8.
Okay.
It's out of date.
Okay.
CLMP has cleaned those trees up big time.
Oh, the
So
canopy.
Fig 8, yeah, the canopy of the trees. It's not true anymore.
okay, take a picture of it.
Is that in
That's what I'm
the
saying.
transportation section?
It's page 32.
Okay.
That's Iron Street before you get to Spicer Hill Road.
So I just remove Fig 8 or get another picture.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that was in one of the sections we didn't update. So, but we
on
can have,
trees
it's easy to remove a figure. Yep. So the last thing to talk about was just on the agriculture side. And so, you know, this has been rewritten a couple of times. And so, you know, it's an interesting thing because the goal is to figure out how to support agriculture while admitting that Ledyard is not as rural as some people think it is, and that we are largely a suburban town. And so how do we protect the agriculture that we do have in a suburban environment? And, you know, the real take home from this was the fact, and this doesn't come as a secret to anybody, but agriculture lacks advocacy in the town. And so there is not someone who comes and sort of speaks up for what the needs of agriculture are. And so, you know, I know the Planning and Zoning Commission, we've reached out to the Farm Bureau a number of times, and had them come to talk to us. We struggle with that. The Farm Bureau comes from people who are in Lebanon, and Lebanon is very different than we are. And so I think we struggle with figuring out what can we do to advocate for agriculture and how do we support agriculture in our town. The one thing that we know we need to address is we need to address essentially the pseudo-accessory uses of farms around farm events. So it's farms being used for weddings, how, you know, it starts out as a farm and then it has a tasting room and, you know, that has a bunch of other things. And, you know, right now that's sort of vaguely or unregulated. And so we do need to figure out how do we, what are there standards that we need to put in place there? How do we support the reasonable accessory uses of farms while making sure it doesn't just become a free-for-all that, you know, if you have a farm use, then you can do anything that you want. Yeah.
You ought to, or at least you've got here, create an ag inventory.
Yeah.
You've had, or for at least the last 2 years, very successful farmers markets. I know the farmers come from other than Ledyard, but I think that should be talked up.
Well, to the point, I mean, we wrote the ordinance that established the agricultural committee. We're just
Right.
waiting for people to
Yep.
come forward
Right.
to sit.
Serve on it.
Correct.
Yeah.
But you can still, again, I think the farmers markets have really talked up agriculture in
Yeah,
Ledyard.
and we do actually mention that. So we do mention that the farmers market has been very successful. We talk about CSAs. A couple of those have tried to start up in town. You know, we think that those are valid agricultural uses and they should be supported. You know, but I think the real thing, it keeps coming back to, and this is, you know, so when we had this conversation, you know, we started with this list of 100 things that, might be good for agriculture. But what it always comes down to is who is the right person to say this is what agriculture on Ledyard needs. And until we have an agricultural commission in place and staffed and active, I'm not sure how much we can do. We do definitely advocate for an agricultural inventory. It's one of the things that a number of the towns in the area have done, so that you can say, oh, look, I have an apple farm, and I have a vegetable farm, and I have these different things, and it gives them a way to advertise that. I think the farmers market is another way that they can do that.
Somebody said there was 47 farms rather, in Ledyard. I don't know if that's true or not. That sounds awfully high.
I can't
They
say.
could be small, little,
Well, and that
mom
is
and pop
that's one of the issues is we have very loosely defined what a farm is, and so the state defines farms by making sure there's a minimum income, right? So you have to produce X number of dollars from your farming activities in order to be considered a farm. We don't do that. I'm not sure we gain anything by doing it, but it does mean that we have lots of nebulous kind of farms. For me, I think that's okay. I mean, I think that's part of what Ledyard is, and I don't think it's a massive problem. So that's essentially the end of my presentation. If there are any other outstanding questions, I'm happy to try to answer them, or if you have other comments that you just want me to take back, I'm happy to take those as well.
I just have a comment. It's
Yeah.
sort of off the side to why you're here tonight, but it's kind of my thing for this year. And we got an email today. There's Regina's starting to work on giving access to the website from the different departments. And so while you were here, and I'm going to be doing this through the budget hearings, I'm on the planning and zoning section, EDC section, basically land use in the on the website. And when I'm in planning and zoning, I clicked 3 times. 2 of them were dead links, and one of them mentions Charlie Carno is the planning director. So if you would just take back to what I'm hoping is that every department and every board and commission will take their piece of the website and make sure, because when we turned over to a new website, some things happen. And unless you'd have no reason to be in there clicking normally, but if somebody else does, and several of them have to do with business things.
Sure.
So it would be good to take
Yeah.
a look at those.
Roxanne, can you send me a link to exactly the page she's talking about so I make sure I go to the right place?
Or I can send
Yeah, if
you,
you've
because
got
I'm
it,
the
so
one
why don't you
hitting the
just-
dead link, so I can send that.
Just so I make sure I go to the right, so I don't be
Yes.
fine, what's she talking about? So I'll be able to.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm sure, it's just like, I think a lot of those links went to the old Ledyard development site, which was a thing that Charlie had.
Right.
Yes.
And I think Liz has mothballed that,
Yes.
which is probably wise. So but I would guess some of those
Yeah.
probably go to that, yeah. Yep.
Anyone else?
I just want to thank the
Yes,
commission for what
very
they do. It's a lot of work.
informative.
Thank you.
And your commission, now you have a public hearing coming up, and then you'll be ready to go.
Yeah, so we have the public hearing February 13th.
Yep.
And so, depending on feedback that we get, we'll either move forward and deliberate then, or put it off to March, depending on
Okay.
what we get.
So we were in receipt of an email from Mr. Treaster. It sounds like only Mr. Soms had the opportunity to actually read it, because we got it today, and most of us were. Honestly, I had a choice between fixing dinner or reading his email, and I chose fixing dinner.
Well, and so to be fair, that email is already entered on the
Okay,
record
so
for
I
the
just
public
wanted
hearing.
to, in
Yep,
fairness,
so-
to
yep,
be sure that the
absolutely.
fact that we did move it on, or he sent it to you
Yeah,
as
no,
well.
we already have it, and
Okay.
Deb's already added it to the record for the public hearing, so the commission will have it, and anyone who goes to look for it will be able to find it.
Very
Yeah.
good. Anyone else? Thank you, Nate.
Thank you. Sorry for the time.
Thank you.
No, it's exactly what we wanted, and you're certainly welcome to stay. In fact, why don't we, after resident property owners, with a nod of the heads for my council here, let's move the land use number 2 up in the agenda? Because I'm sure, Nate, you would like to just leave here knowing we voted yes.
I figured I needed to stay around for the votes.
So
I appreciate it.
We'll move it up so you don't have to. I mean, you're welcome to say, but you don't have to. But let's at least get to resident and property owners. If anybody like to speak at this time, Mr. Liam?
Yeah.
Hard act to follow. I mean,
Yes, he
thanks
was.
for- I'm glad that I'm after him. Because I was interested sitting there listening to him. So, Mike Lamb, 670 Colonel Ledyard Highway. So, just got a few things. I know we talked about it last night there, Linda. But I know we had to register voter check when we did the
Sale of the school.
But we didn't do that for the meeting last night. I don't understand the reason why, because we're accepting money for the school of sale, but then we're spending money. Why we didn't have a resident voter check? I made the motion, you know, put that out there for a hand vote, but it's kind of like the fox watching the hen house. For that whole process, you got people voting whether they're registered or not. So I just think that's something that should be looked at. For anything, maybe make some type of threshold or whatever you guys want, you know, if it is 1%.
And I'll take that on myself. I mean, that's a fair statement. I was trying to avoid what happened when we did it for the Ledyard Center School, where people stood in line for
I
an
should have
hour.
early intentionally expecting
Yeah,
that.
expecting that, yeah.
So I should have
I
come
didn't
early.
expect it to be close, and so that was probably my fault. I would probably do it differently the next time. I think I told you, even had you not made the motion, if it had been even the slightest bit close, we would have done we were prepared to do the check-in,
Yeah,
so.
and like I said, it wasn't even close for the Ledyard Fair or the Ledyard Center
No,
School.
no.
So,
But a fair comment, and certainly in the future, we have so few of these votes that it just wasn't anything that occurred to me to do. But I appreciate your comment.
And then one of the things that was discussed, and I forgot to do the numbers, but they talked about a 12 to 15-year lifespan. Could be longer depending on the test from the inspections and everything. But I think, and it was mentioned, I forgot which people mentioned there, about you guys and the Board of Ed getting together and actually setting aside, you know, through the funds that they make from this for a direct replacement of that carpet, because I mean, that is pretty expensive.
You want to address that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would think it should be for a direct replacement, not the ancillaries, because they already have people that are working there for the inspection. The guy said it's only like 3 hours a month.
Right.
So that's a low cost there.
So I agreed with that suggestion by the superintendent. I think it's a good idea. The only caveat is that I think we have to be careful about how much money we think we're going to get, because we've had quite a lot of conversations about this, and Ledyard is not the place, unlike Waterford and New London, where people are going to say, hey, I want to go there and use that facility.
Yeah.
So we may not see a lot of money, but I still think we should be setting aside. I love sinking funds, so
Yeah,
I
but I
think
mean,
it's a good
it
idea.
should come from the use of that.
Absolutely,
As well as, you know,
absolutely,
I think
yeah.
that the town have to be kicking in something, or the school board, when it does come time for whenever the lifespan ends.
Right,
So
right,
Well,
totally
it
agree.
really should be in the capital.
It needs to be in the capital.
Yeah. Well, that's what a sinking
Yeah.
fund
No,
is, in the
yeah.
capital plan.
So we'd
And
have to-
money,
right,
it has
right.
source of funds, which would be revenue from non-town,
But
you know,
that number is going to be so minuscule.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah.
That we have to
It's
put
gonna-
money.
To the point, it's gonna be,
You don't
whatever
know
funding
yet.
we do get would go into it,
Yeah.
but, yeah, the town, either during the budget process, from either the Board of Ed budget or the general budget, wherever, some funding's gonna have to go into that capital.
So
account,
why don't we
sinking
just
fund.
have an action item for finance to discuss a sinking fund for replacement of the high
Well,
school track?
Yes, and the Board of Ed should be putting the money into the
Correct.
sinking
Yeah,
fund.
right,
Yes.
right.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
But
just-
good, yeah, go ahead. No, good
Yeah,
suggestion.
and then just one other thing, I understand that the PMBC is going to be doing the funding, or controlling the funding for that
Yes.
project. I know there was a 5% contingency fee, which was a little over $100,000, 101 something.
Yep.
And they said there was going to be no other expenses other than maybe the cost overruns for the actual construction. But I know sometimes things are purchased, oh, we got leftover money. I just want to make sure that who controls the actual writing that check. Does what they approve it, then it comes to you guys before, or they're the ones writing the check?
No,
PM
PMBC.
PMBC.
PMBC is one that authorizes the.
I heard loud and clear that if there are cost underruns,
The funding, any unexpended funds.
would go back into the,
That, from the project, there's no add-ons that we're gonna go do to say.
Sometimes, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
so the PMBC knows that, just because, hey, if I add on, I get an extra 50K, I can go do this.
Because I've seen other building projects, not necessarily this town, going, oh, we still have
Oh, yeah.
the contingency, let's get some more desk
Talk
or.
talk to Steve Joskowitz,
Yeah.
he's squeaky.
Well, the only reason I say that, I went to one of the meetings for the PMBC, and I discussed it with him. They were gonna spend $18,000 for a new backup system for the police station for the elevator. And my suggestion was him, why don't we find out what's wrong with it first before we go spending money? And I think, I did read minutes, and I think you kind of said the same thing when it came to here.
Right.
But he's like, and he made a statement, well, wouldn't you be concerned if the cops neighborhood prison fails? I said, yes, I would be. But we still should find out what was wrong with it in the first place. You know, you just don't spend money because you can't figure out what's wrong.
yeah.
So
But anyway.
Mike, really quick on that, the resolution, the way the resolution was written was any overages, alt ads, et cetera, have to go to town council.
Okay.
For approval.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
So-
Any change
so
of building
any
project has to
changes
come back to
will
us.
Come here, and you'd be making a decision.
And we're squeaky too.
But anyway, like I said, I definitely like the
Yes,
information that
it was
was
very
given.
good, yes.
Other than that,
And
thank
thanks for
Thank you.
coming, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Come more often.
It's tough sometimes at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah. I'm not working for it.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, with your permission, is I would like to move item number 2 under land use, and Kevin, would you make that motion?
Sure. I make a motion to endorse the proposed amendments to the 2010 Ledyard Plan of Conservation and Development as contained in the draft dated October 24, 2019, and forwarded to the town council on November 5th, 2019.
Second.
So this was discussed at our, the last land use meeting that we had. Overall, we had no concerns, objections, or real comments to the POCD. We appreciate the work that the Planning and Zoning Commission had put together. We had actually only provided one comment, and it was referring to the location of where they discussed the short-term rentals, because it fell under the zoning part. and it
Oh,
should fall
okay,
under
yep,
land
I
use.
remember that, yeah.
That was the only comment that we had.
Good.
So other than that, we endorsed it, so.
Any other comments? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Malone?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Thank you again.
Thank you all.
Bye now.
Welcome back, Mr. Washington.
Thank you. Pleasure to be back.
With that,
Okay, committee, commission, and board reports. I see no one to report. Comments of town councilors. Yes.
Okay, just an FYI, I attended the Ledyard Interchurch Emergency Fund meeting this morning, and I'm there representing Our Lady of Lourdes. But over the past year, just to give you an idea of the type of help that people have come for, 9 people came because they had problems with the rent, 2 people with utilities, 1 with car taxes, and 2 from the furniture bank. They needed beds. And I was surprised with the number of people who come.
Was
because
that
they were-
high compared to other years?
I don't know, we have never done this sort
okay.
of inventory before to say. Somebody
Okay.
just, out of mere curiosity, decided to see
Oh, okay.
how many,
What the trending looks like.
what the trending looks like, but 9 for the rents.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well, I'd just like to make a real quick comment. I had a pleasure serving with the commission. I served with the council last year, and I'm really honored to be given the opportunity to come back and serve with you, ladies and gentlemen, and looking forward to the
Thank you.
time.
Good.
So
Okay, moving on. Let's see. Let's try. See, we.
Hold on.
Yes.
I didn't, Ms. Gratner, you
I'm
talk
sorry.
about beds and everything, as somebody that's throwing stuff away at the dump, is there, I don't. think
No,
the
we
town-
have a furniture bank.
I don't know if the town people are aware of, that they can turn in gently used items there. I don't know if we can get that information out more.
But I don't know if you can use beds. In other
Yeah, it's a
words,
tough-
From about the frames and everything, or something like that. I'm not sure. Just, I'm something I'm unaware of as a townsperson.
Okay, are you aware of this fund, the Ledyard Interchurch Emergency?
I've heard about it.
Right, okay. Well, if people are in need, they can't meet their rent or whatever, they come to Town Hall and Mary Beth will vet them to see if they fall under the income guidelines. And these are the issues that they came with. And 2 people needed beds, so we got beds from the furniture bank.
Okay.
I don't know if beds like mattresses or something that you could,
That'd be a little sketchy.
Yes.
I'll talk to frame and stuff like that.
right, probably that, or maybe you could even give it to the furniture bank. I think, is it St. Luke's that has a furniture bank?
Yes, St. Luke's
St.
does it.
Luke's.
St. Luke's, right.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, okay, well, I'm glad that you found out.
The issue the furniture bank has is storage.
Storage.
I went to donate some items, I called them, and they said they really didn't have
Yep.
any place to put things.
Right.
I found a good home for the stuff regardless. but-
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 4 sets of minutes, and I'm going to try to do them all at once. So, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of those 4 sets of minutes.
Make a motion to approve the special meeting minutes of December 11th, the regular meeting minutes of December 11th, the special meeting minutes of December 18th, and the special meeting minutes of December 23rd.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Abstain.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Malone?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 abstention.
Okay, motion carries. You'll find your communications in the portal. There's your new communication that came in yesterday or today. Referrals, I don't believe I've done anything this week. Subcommittee reports, admin. You did not meet.
We did not meet tonight, and I don't know if you want to go ahead with the public hearing, but the only ordinance that we really did not come to any agreement on was the one, number 2, concerning the alcohol beverages at the town of Ledyard facilities.
Oh, I put
We-
the wrong one in there. That one's not supposed to be in there.
Oh, okay. The others, we did talk about, and,
There's only 3. There should only be 3 that are going.
right,
It's the dog leashing,
right,
amendments to ordinance 400-007, which is waste management and recycling, and amendments to ordinance number 300-027, which is ordinance regulating the parking and other activities in towns
Mhm.
right-of-ways. So that
Those
one
3.
should not be in there. That was my error.
You mean number 4 should not, or should?
Number 3 should not.
Number 3? No, 3, we already had,
No, the one for the alcohol should
Yes.
The alcohol number 2.
right, yeah, number 2, okay.
Okay.
Okay, I make a motion.
Oh,
We're not
no,
there yet.
no, we're not there
Oh.
yet. We're still under reports.
Okay.
Finance? Okay.
Finance has not met since the last council meeting.
You will be very busy, so this will probably be one of the last times you say that you have not met. Land use?
Land use is also not met since our last meeting.
Let's go with liaison reports to my left. No? To my right?
WPCA met 7 p.m. Tuesday, December 17. They are working on their first draft of the water budget, and they should be ready with their draft for us by March. That was it.
Very good. Farmers Market Committee. The winter market is going extremely well. Numbers are way up over last year. Probably a combination of the location, which we find to be much better as far as being able to get people from both sides of town. And also, I just think it's we're in the second year, people were kind of used to it. We've got a really good group of vendors. It's a really nice, people are getting used to those breakfast sandwiches for breakfast, so people do come for breakfast. It's just a nice kind of place to hang out on a Saturday morning, and a lot of people do come and just sort of hang out and talk to their neighbors, so it's going extremely well. Any other reports? Report of the mayor.
Good evening, everybody. I'll move pretty quick on this stuff, so stick with me. Avalonia, as you recall, we provided funding through the open space account for the Atkinson and Durham parcels. Avalonia is anticipating finally closing on those at the end of this month. There were some title issues that they were getting clarified. So that will be finally going forward, which is really great news. Avalonia is also working on another parcel, and I will probably be coming to you with another request for that, for a piece in Ledyard. Pretty substantial piece that's contiguous to a lot of open space, but there will be more on that. Fire truck news, R11 and R12 are both back in service for the first time since August of 2018.
Wow.
Which is absolutely incredible. But yeah, it was incredibly challenging, so we have both those engines back in service, R11 and 13. 12 is the green one that you may see around town, the backup rig. I took part in the Tri-Town Trail field walk, the northern section. It is incredible. I've never been out there, but when we walk this section, it is beautiful. It's stunning. There is an amazing Joe Clark Brook, I think, is the one that's down in there. Absolutely beautiful. So Councilor Soms has committed some time to help me start clearing brush for them. We're going to do some volunteer work and start blazing the trail. So we're looking forward to that. I attended the Eastern Regional Tourism Board meeting at the end of December. Your appointee, Carol Christensen, wasn't able to attend. I had hoped to attend as her proxy, but they did not allow that. I had a number of comments that I had hoped to make to them, but they wouldn't allow that either. There was no public comment period, even though they do get funding from the state, which was a little bit disappointing. But you've probably read about them in the New London Day. There's some serious issues going on there. They are working hard to get that corrected because right now they risk losing about $400,000 of funding. Right. So hopefully that'll get corrected. We had a ribbon cutting at Boss Hair Design that is down on, I believe it's 12 Military Highway, the building that is right next to the Gales Ferry Post Office. That was on Saturday morning. The EDC did that. Senator Austin was there, Representative Conley was there, and a good number of people. So nice new shop that's down there. Feel free to swing by and welcome Danielle and her crew. I was elected the vice chair of the COG at the December meeting, so that'll be a new role for me to start filling, actually now, next week. Hired Steve Holyfield as the Administrator of Emergency Services and Jim Mann as the Emergency Management Director. Russ Shaw, as you know, retired on January 2nd, and we did not have anybody that could fill both roles, so we ended up having to split the two tasks. But I think we're in good hands with both. I've met with both. Both are already on their way, meeting with the state, meeting with Department of Homeland Security to get all that stuff moving along. So we will not have a gap in service and support for that, which is good. I welcomed Paul Whites-Carver to the Ledyard EDC. He's the recently retired Navy base commander. Great guy, recent transplant to Gales Ferry, and happy to step up as soon as he arrived. So happy to have him, and he took part in our meeting just last night. Department head budgets are due tomorrow, and I start meeting with all department heads. Actually, my days on the 29th and 30th are full meeting with everybody to go through their budgets line item by line item. So there'll be more to go on that. I presented a proclamation to Eagle Scout Ryan Prue on Monday night. I apologize, I was not able to make the town meeting. Both had gotten scheduled at 6 p.m. and the Eagle Scout one was scheduled a while back, but Ledyard is certainly plush with Eagle Scouts. So we do well with them, and they provide us a whole lot of volunteer hours. Events magazine, as you know, it went very well. Hopefully everybody got a copy of it. It looked amazing. We've gotten really great compliments. We also got great compliments from the advertisers that were in there, several of which have said we've already gotten calls because of those ads. So that's really positive. The next deadline for that is February 18th. It will be arriving at doorsteps on March 16th, so it will be a March, April, May type of edition. So if town council has some ideas or snippet articles to put in, that will be good. And then the last quick thing, Senator Austin and Representatives Conley and France would very much like to meet with as many of you as possible to hear things that are of interest to you before they start the legislative session this year, which is February 5th. So I will give you a proposal of the following week, the 22nd or 23rd, or 29th or 30th. So the last 2 weeks of January, if there is room to do it. I don't know if you feel comfortable having it prior to a town council meeting, but I'm going to leave it to you to make that decision, and I can confirm with them.
Roxanne, do you want to look real quick? Do we have any, like, public hearings or?
There's a public hearing, it's going to be on the 22nd at
Okay.
6:15.
Okay, so that's kind of out.
Yeah.
How about on the 29th?
29th.
No, that would be an odd week.
Well,
that-
29th, we
special
have the
Oh,
land,
that's
we have
right.
the workshop with the fair.
Work session on
The work
on
session.
fair.
What time is that workshop?
6 o'clock.
That's going to take a long time. Both of them will take a long
Right,
time.
and the other workshop is, we have, I think, is on the
21st, I think.
21st for the.
Okay, how about if
They could also
Roxanne
do
and
a
I will...
daytime one too, so just talk about it, but they said they could do a daytime
They
meeting
could
too
do a
if you want.
daytime, okay.
Yep,
Of course,
so-
that would eliminate a lot of people here.
Yeah, Mikey wouldn't be able to.
And
Tommy
Kevin
probably
wouldn't be,
Kevin wouldn't be
depending
able
on
to
the
go.
day, you know.
Okay,
Okay,
so anyway.
we'll look at
yeah,
it and...
Take a look at that, because I know they're starting to get under the gun in terms of timing with February 5th coming up pretty quick, so. And
Okay,
that is all I have for you tonight.
thank you. Any questions for the mayor?
Yes, sir.
So, who's going to serve as the fire marshal? Jim's still going to be the fire marshal?
Jim is still the fire marshal.
Okay.
Yep, the emergency management director role is really a 10-hour-a-week job. It's kind of flex, so depending on what the situation is, some weeks will be less, certainly based on a blizzard, let's say, some weeks will be more.
Or drills or whatever?
Yep, exactly.
Kind of fits.
Kevin?
So,
Yes, sir.
heard on the news tonight, I don't know if you had heard anything, but the governor had released the open space grants, and Ledyard was one of the towns that was named to receive it.
Yes.
Yes, and so that's the one that I just referenced
Okay.
on Avery Hill Road.
Okay.
That's the one. They did secure the grant for that. They have control of the property, but what I really want to do is I want to go into Munis tomorrow, look at what we have in the open space fund, because it continues to grow every time we have a closing and everything, but make sure that we're in good shape.
Right.
Excuse me, I had kind of wanted to see us close on something with Avalonia before even coming to the table with an ask,
Right.
but these title issues have kind of snagged them, but I kind of like what we're doing with Avalonia. I like that our percentage partnership is allowing us to, like in the Atkinson case, buying 400 acres.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yep.
I mean, so I like the idea, but yeah, that was the piece,
That was
exactly.
the piece, okay. Because the news didn't say it was one.
46 Avery Hill Road,
It didn't-
100 acres.
It just said Ledyard.
Yeah,
That's a nice chunk.
yep.
Any other questions for the mayor? Yes.
We just want to thank Mr. Shaw for his service.
Yeah,
We found
absolutely.
His work invaluable.
Yeah, Russ did a great job, and he had to oversee some challenging times, of course, with the transition from LVs to Americans, which was difficult.
Yep.
He did a great job, and his time down south is well deserved.
Okay, we have no old business. Anyone like to amend the agenda under new business? Hearing none. Admin?
Okay. I make a motion to set a public hearing date to be held on January 22nd, 2020 at 6:15 in the council chambers, Annex Building, 741 Colonel Ledyard Highway, to receive comments and recommendations regarding the following. 1, an ordinance regarding control of dogs in parks and recreation areas, school property, and the historic district. 2, amendments to ordinance number 400-007, formerly number 146, which is an ordinance regarding waste management and recycling in the town of Ledyard. And 4, amendments to ordinance number 300-027, formerly number 152, an ordinance regulating parking and other activities in town roads and rights-of-way, and providing penalties for the violation thereof.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded.
I have a suggestion.
Yes.
None of these are pressing. We could schedule this for February 12th instead, and that would open up time to meet with the state
Does
representatives.
that sound reasonable?
I'll
Friendly,
withdraw.
no, you don't have to withdraw, just friendly amendments
So
that
it would,
change
it would be February the 12th?
instead of Jan, yep.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And then my other question is, there's 3 ordinances, one's new, the other 2 are just amendments. Do you think 6:15 is enough time?
Denise, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that would mean the, okay, and you're both good with that? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Okay. Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Malone?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. We took care of the land use issue. I just wanted to mention before we adjourn, something that I kind of mentioned when Mr. Woody was here, as that is one of the things I wanted to work on this year is the, I mentioned previously about the boards and commissions and getting all of their information updated. And I would ask if you were a liaison to a board or committee, if you would go and take a look at their pages on the website. Because anytime I spend even a few minutes, I find errors. And a lot of it is just because we moved to a new website, but a lot of it is because the information has not been updated. And it's not up to Regina to know that a commission member has left, or Roxanne to know if certain things have changed as far as those commissions. And so there is, I keep running into misinformation, so I hope everybody will take the opportunity to do that. And I do plan, and Fred can probably, or the mayor could probably give fair warning during the budget hearings. As the person is sitting there, I'm going to be going through their pages in the website. So you can give them fair warning there.
Absolutely. And we're really hoping that next week we're going to start, because the idea is that the department heads will all have control of their pages, so they can go in and make changes, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
So even EDC, Mike Drymiller
is chomping at the bit to make those changes. The other thing is, when we move to the new website, one of the things I recommended we change is instead of having a link to a PDF file, to actually have the information. And again, Regina can't do that. That should come from the department head, that they should be able to make that change. The reason you don't want the PDF is because that stuff stays in cyberspace forever. And if you do a Google search that says Public Works Department policy on such and such, you could come up with something that's 5 years old that has been changed, but it's still out there because it's, it's cached in the Google search, whatever, I don't know what the technology terms are for that, but so we want to get away from PDFs as much as we can. So, and with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. We are adjourned. About accepted.